And welcome to another show of Preparing for the Unexpected. I'm your host, Alex Fullick, and today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different when it comes to unexpected events and things we need to plan for. If you're like me, you've seen many clips on TV or YouTube or other social media sites where they show post-disaster, fallen trees and knocked down homes, and unfortunately, you see animals, people's pets walking along the streets, looking for their owners, wondering what's going on, confused. And it got me thinking, wondering, this is an area that I don't think a lot of people talk about or think about even when it comes to disasters, or even not just disasters, but, planning for. We see a pet in a window store and we just go get one. And there's more to it than that. There's a lot of other thoughts we need to put into place and other considerations we need to have. And I thought, this would make an interesting show, something a little bit differently to think about and to talk about. So I reached out to someone I know and care about very much because she cares about my pets. Dr. Barbara Drewry, who is a vet here at the Royal City Animal Hospital here in Guelph. She takes care of my LG and makes sure that he's all healthy, and my last dog, Seven, took care of him as well. So, Dr. Drewry, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Alex. I'm thrilled to be here. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I would like to talk at the beginning about getting prepared for a new pet rather than jumping right into disasters. Perhaps we can talk about disaster planning a little bit later in the presentation. But I've been at Royal City Animal Hospital for a long time now, about 25 years. I graduated from the Ontario Veterinary College in 1988, which seems like a long time ago, and I guess it was. And have did some equine practice actually, which was excellent experience working with horses. But decided that my real love was with small animals. So I've been in Guelph for a long time, and our practice is very much what we consider to be a sort of a family-based practice. We're a small practice. I'm the only full-time veterinarian. I do have an associate who works part-time to help me out, but I like to know everyone who comes in to my practice, and I like to know every pet who comes into my practice. And I'm not interested in having a great big huge practice where I don't know everyone. So that's kind of my philosophy, and I think Alex, it's what you're looking for as well. So it's been a good fit. And certainly LG is one of our favorites. So
I hope so.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, it definitely shows every time you go in there. You can definitely see that everyone that works there, cares about the pets, and so many cats and dogs, and everyone plays and gets along, and all the staff that's there as well are very friendly and open and get to know you as well. So it definitely shows.
Yeah, we really want to have continuity. We want to have the same people here when you come in. Obviously, there's some staff turnover. That's just the nature of any field, but certainly I think the continuity is important, and consistency, and certainly those are things when you're thinking about obtaining a pet and looking after your pet. Consistency and continuity are very important. Especially when we come to things like training. I think you would agree, Alex.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Can we talk for a few minutes about obtaining a new pet?
I was just going to jump in there and say let's talk about that. I mentioned it in my opening. Sometimes people just see a pet in a window. How much is that dog in the window, as the old song goes, and they just go for it, only to find out that's not really what they needed, and it's not what they wanted, and there's so much more to consider. So can we go through that? What do we need to consider?
Absolutely, and I'll just address your sort of window shopping for a second. It's a lovely attribute to have, to want to save all of the animals, and the dog needs rescuing or the cat needs rescuing, and those are wonderful feelings to have. But you're talking about a living being, and you need to have more in place than just a feeling. And one of the things that I see all the time is people who, particularly with dogs, we don't look at breeds. I'm talking about breeds here. We don't look at breeds so much with cats, although some people do. But particularly with dogs, people will come in with an 8-week-old puppy that they've paid a lot of money for, and they liked the breed, but they've done absolutely no research on this breed. And I remember one client who came in with a little white Bichon. They're sweet little dogs. They have a lovely personality, but they do get urinary problems. And this particular owner, the dog was about 2, and the dog had developed stones in his bladder, and she was livid that I had never told her that. But you didn't ask me. You need to ask me those things before you get the dog. You're putting me in a very difficult situation when we at the age of 2. By the way, do you know that that this is a common occurrence in this particular breed? You've already fallen in love with the dog, So I think one certainly piece of advice is try and do your homework. So talk to your veterinarian, talk to friends, talk to breeders, talk to people at the Humane Society if you're not getting a purebred dog, and find out what requirements those dogs have, that particular dog has in terms of exercise, diet, that sort of thing. Is it a Newfoundland that's going to be going through a bag of dog food in 3 weeks? There are lots of different questions to ask, and I think the time to do it is before you get the dog, not after you've already bought or purchased it or obtained it and fallen in love with it. So does that help?
Both LG and Seven I got from a breeder, and they actually went through that. Are you aware of what soft-coated Wheaten Terriers are like? Do you understand what they eat, what they can't eat? Because he is allergic to some things. He can't digest pork, and it's sometimes the skin problems. And I know later in life they sometimes, correct me if I'm wrong, kidney problems.
Yes, absolutely.
So are you aware of these kind of things? So I went up online because there's no excuse for not looking up online. Everything, Google is
everything now is online.
So
yes.
You can find whatever you're looking for. So
that's ideal. To be able to do that. You can. And nobody, I will never say don't get that particular dog unless it's unless I know something about you that prohibits having, say, a dog of that size or whatever. But it's just a matter of being forewarned is forearmed. You know that these things are possible with LG, and so therefore you're not surprised if all of a sudden he develops an allergy to something. Whereas if you hadn't done any research, your feelings about it might be different, and there might be some resentment. And I think it's very important to try and preclude that by getting as much information as you can. And veterinarians, and particularly veterinary technicians, are wonderful sources of information. Certainly in this practice, we don't charge anything if you come in and talk about what you're looking for, and is that a reasonable approach or a reasonable breed for you? And I think most veterinarians and veterinary clinics are the same. We want people to be well matched. We want them to be prepared for everything. But those are certainly some of the things to think about. And you've talked about dietary requirements, Alex, exercise requirements, environmental requirements. I think and stimulation are important. If you're away from the house for 12 hours, it becomes very difficult to have a young rambunctious dog. They will definitely develop behavioral issues because dogs are social creatures and they need to be with you. Sorry, Alex, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with you. I know with myself, sometimes I'm away for a long stretch during the day because I work in downtown Toronto and have to come home. So during the day, I have a dog walker who actually just came before we started talking today and takes LG for an hour and a half, and he plays with other dogs. He needs that to run around and get all that exercise that I may not be able to do.
he does absolutely need it, and I think it's one of the things I'm finding so encouraging is particularly in Guelph. We have a number of businesses that have developed over the past few years that do exactly that walk your dog and look after it and provide the stimulation that any dog needs. I mean, that sort of thing was absolutely unheard of. When I remember in Toronto with my first dog, and I had to hire the kid across the street to come in, there was nothing like that that was available. So I think people are really, and that's very encouraging that people are becoming much more aware of the exercise and the stimulation requirements of their pets, particularly with older dogs. A lot of, and I know we're jumping around a bit here, but I think this is a good time to segue into that the older dogs need to be stimulated. People come in and they say, but he just sleeps all day. Well, do you let him? If you're just going to let him sleep all day, he needs to get out. Arthritis is 50 times worse if you don't move those joints. So he doesn't need one walk a day for an hour. He needs 4 15-minute walks, and he needs time to sniff. He needs time to look around. So those characteristics change as the dog changes. With puppies, you're looking more to burn off some of that energy. With an older dog, you're looking to try and keep them fit by mentally stimulating them.
Right. Well, you touched on something I thought was rather interesting there. Let's face it, there's no such thing as an ugly puppy. They're all cute and adorable. Yep. And a lot of times people don't realize when they see these small puppies that they can actually grow large. And when you were talking about speaking with your vets and doing your investigations, sometimes these small little puppies grow up into really big dogs. And if you're living in a small, bachelor apartment, that may not be the right dog for you.
Yeah, or it may, on the surface it may not look as if it's the right dog, but if you can provide the right sort of if you can provide the things that the dog needs, it may be absolutely fine. So as I said earlier, I don't think I would ever say no, don't, but do with knowledge. So if you have a dog walker coming in for an hour and a half, as you do, I don't think it would matter, Alex, if you lived in a one-bedroom apartment. You would still make sure that your dog got everything that it needed. Just in terms of how the dogs develop, because I do think this is an important point. If you're looking at a purebred dog, you know what the adult size of that dog is going to be. If you're looking at a mix, you don't necessarily know, and sort of mixed breed dogs are absolutely fabulous, but you don't. You don't know for sure what characteristics they're going to have because they're a blend of breeds. And if you're lucky, you get what we call hybrid vigor, which is the genetic mixing that provides a good, healthy, strong dog, perhaps even healthier than a purebred dog who maybe has been inbred. But certainly it's nice if you can get a bit of advice as to, okay, what are we going to be looking at in terms of, in terms of final weight? And I don't have a crystal ball, but I've seen a lot of dogs, and I can usually give you some idea of what the full-grown size is going to be like. And to go back to dietary requirements, as we were talking earlier, if you have LG on a very good diet, and one of the things that makes the diet good is that it does not have a lot of material. It's what we call a highly digestible food. So if you're looking at a large dog, even a Labrador or a Great Dane or a Newfoundland or something, you want a food that is highly digestible. Because if it's not digested, they're going to be pooping it out the other end, and that can be a major problem. And often when you're buying food, often that's the price differential. So the more expensive foods tend to be more digestible and so you have less waste. The less expensive foods you tend to have to feed more of them, more of the diet, because there isn't as much material that it gives them the proper nutrition, and also there is usually more waste involved. So those are kind of some of the things to think about that. Clients often say, well, why are you talking to me about food? And that's one of the reasons. I want a good skin and hair coat. I don't want you to have to pick up tons and tons and tons of material. So those are the kinds of things that we're trying to get at when we're talking about dietary requirements and about specific foods. There are some foods that are more digestible than others, and there's been a huge advance. I mean, since I graduated, in the late 80s, huge advance in diets for pets. We treat dogs now with diets, and I don't think they often realize that. If I have a cat or a dog with kidney disease, it's not medicine I use so much as I use a therapeutic diet. These diets are designed to help. We can't reverse the kidney disease, but we can certainly slow down the progression of it. And I can do that with food as opposed to doing it with medicine. And I mean, how wonderful if only we could do that with people. Just eat what you need to, well, I guess we can, eat what you need to be healthy, but certainly with dogs and cats, because we have control of what goes into their mouth, it's very easy to have your pet on a therapeutic diet that can really control a lot of conditions. Gastrointestinal conditions are another one that comes to mind, as well as kidney disease. Gosh, Alex, we're jumping all over here, aren't we?
That's okay. Why don't we take a quick little break here,
Sure.
And we'll be right back, and we'll continue on. I bet you there's lots of information that people are listening to out there going, wow, I didn't think of that. I didn't think of this. So, lots of great information coming from our guest, Dr. Drewry, today, and we'll be right back. And welcome back to Preparing for the Unexpected. Today we're talking with Dr. Barbara Drewry, my vet who takes care of my dogs, and we were having a great chat before our break, talking about how to prepare ourselves for a pet, what we need to consider, choosing the right pet. And just before, while we were actually on our break, we started to touch base on insurance. And how we introduce a pet to a household, and illnesses and things like that. And you were having some great comments there, Dr. Drewry. Can you kind of for our guests anyway, go through what you were saying about insurance?
Yeah, absolutely, Alex. I think that it's I would like to touch a little bit on insurance, certainly not specific companies, but the general philosophy of insuring your pet. Things have changed dramatically in the past 10 or 20 years, not only in terms of the cost of everything, but the cost of veterinary medicine and surgery has certainly escalated along with other costs. And I think that sometimes people don't realize how much things can cost. I think the other thing that has changed is the role of the pet in the household. These days, pets are usually considered to be a very valuable member of the family, and I think there are a number of reasons for that. We don't have perhaps as much extended family close by as maybe we used to, and dogs and cats can just serve a very valuable role, so that they're treasured perhaps in a way that they weren't maybe 15 or 20 years ago. And I know certainly our clients at Royal City Animal Hospital really want to do what they can for their pets. So if we have a serious illness or an orthopedic problem, something like a fracture or a ruptured cruciate ligament or something like that, our clients tend to want to fix that problem if it is fixable. Whereas perhaps in the past, the dog or the cat might have been seen as being perhaps more disposable. So in other words, well, I'll just get another dog. That thinking, I really don't hear that thinking very much anymore. People want that dog. They have bonded to that dog. Their relationship with that particular dog or cat is very strong. If you have a 5-year-old dog who's ruptured a cruciate ligament, that's a fixable problem. Unfortunately, it's a fixable problem that tends to cost between $3,000 and $4,000. So
wow.
when I started, I think the other thing that maybe should be touched on is that in Canada, insurance for pets is not widely talked about. In Great Britain, and Alex, you're probably maybe familiar with this, certainly in Great Britain, I think it's 60 to 70% of the population who owns pets has insurance. It's just assumed that you will have insurance for your pet. So I think Canada's a long way from that, but I do think certainly the companies we deal with are getting better and better at providing what is needed at a pretty reasonable cost. I used to tell people, if you have a couple of $1,000s and you just put it away in a bank account, that should do you. That's probably not going to be enough now. And if you have a major issue, there isn't anything we can do about that. Everything is like that. So I think certainly to have the discussion about insurance is very important. I hate to see someone who, I'll use the example of a ruptured cruciate ligament again, come in, the dog's, can't bear weight on that leg, really it needs surgery, and they say, well, I wish someone had talked to me about insurance. Well, we did, but you didn't hear us because it wasn't something that you even thought that it would ever happen to you. So we're trying to get better. We obviously can't recommend a certain policy, but we do have experience with a number of the companies, the insurance companies that are out there, and we can certainly tell you what our experience has been. And actually, with our new puppies, we give every new puppy I forget if it's a 6 or 8 week. I think it's an 8-week trial of insurance, so that people not thinking they're going to need it so much, but just to make people aware that it's out there, and then at the end of the 7 or 8 weeks, they can decide if this is something that they feel is going to be helpful for them. Even something like just straight accident insurance. Accidents tend to happen in younger pets. So even just to have accident insurance, where if your dog does break his leg, you're going to have coverage for that. So I think a lot of it, Alex, is trying to get people aware that there is insurance and to know sort of what the options are. I think the other thing that people need to understand is that when I see a puppy at 8 weeks, if there is an existing problem, so for instance, if that dog already has maybe a dental problem or an eye problem or it seems to be, there seems to be an existing problem, maybe the gait, the way they walk is not quite normal, legally I have to record that, so that if you want to try and get that insurance before anything is written in your file that there's an existing problem, because it's just like insurance with us. If you have an existing problem, you may still get coverage, but you will probably have higher rates. Does that help to explain a little bit about how it works, Alex?
Yep, sure does.
Okay,
and I hope
good.
that does for all of our listeners as well. You did mention, the insurance, to have it and not use it. That's just like, a lot of our listeners who are developing business continuity plans and disaster plans. It's the same thing. You've got to prepare for the unexpected, and the same thing happens with pets. Yes,
exactly. Yeah, very, very true. I know with life insurance, but I haven't died. And my insurance is ready to expire. But that was my choice to make sure that I had that policy. So it is very much like our own insurance, except that with your pet, you will probably need to use the insurance. So it's a little bit different. With people, very often we never need to use the insurance. With pets, you usually do. There's usually something that you need insurance for. So that that comes into rates, of course. If the rates are going to be higher, obviously, if everybody's going to be using it. So, but certainly the insurance companies would be happy to go through that with you. Lisa's one of our registered veterinary technicians. She does have a breakdown of sort of the things to ask when you're talking to your insurance company, and she would certainly we'd be happy to pass that on to any of your listeners who might find that helpful.
Great. I'll make sure that's in our package online.
Okay,
and put
great.
the website there for you guys, so everybody feel free to check out Royal City Animal Hospital. Okay, so let's move on to how we introduce a new pet to a household, that already may have a dog or a cat or a baby. How do we do that? What should we consider?
Yeah, there's certainly most of it's common sense. I think again the thing I would like to stress is before you bring the other dog or cat home, come and talk to us, because I'm going to use cats as an example. Cats are funny creatures. They're not like small dogs at all. They're very different. And to bring a cat into a household, whether it's an adult cat or a kitten, into a household where there is already another cat, a dog, or a baby, that's highly, highly stressful for a cat. Not in the same way that it is for a dog. And there are things you can do to be prepared for that. There's a pheromone that you can plug into the wall called Feel Away, which is I'm not aware of any others on the market, so I'll have to use that particular trade name. But that does help cats with to calm them and to help them feel that this is their territory. A lot of people don't realize that the way cats mark their territory is by rubbing against you and by rubbing against the walls, and a lot of cats who actually are scratching and either using a scratching post or using the furniture or using your leg they're not sharpening their nails, they're not sharpening their claws. They're scent glands in their pads, and what they're doing is they're marking their territory. So when a cat rubs his face against you as he walks by, he's marking you as being part of his territory, and that's a good thing. You want you want to be part of that cat's territory. So we have my point is to try and get as much information as you can before you make the change. We have a couple of handouts that again I'd be happy to share with you about introducing a new pet to the household. We can put those on the website too. The big thing I think is certainly the calming things, the Feel Away, as I mentioned, for cats, and there are a couple of holistic remedies also that we use for dogs. The big thing is to make it gradual, so that you don't bring a big bouncing puppy into right, and don't introduce them quickly. You want to do everything gradually, and that might mean for a cat that the cat stays in his carrier just in one room by itself for a couple of days until he gets used to, and then sort of gradually gets used to just being in that particular room, and then more gradually introduced to the rest of the family. So you might be talking with a cat. You might be talking about an introduction over a week. With a dog, obviously, it's going to be much faster, but you certainly would want to have both dogs on leashes. You certainly don't want a dog bounding in and frightening the other dog, or worst case scenario, causing a dog fight. Your dog who's already at home and your cat are going to be territorial, and this is a new influence coming in to their territory, so there may be some fear. Often aggression is masked. The aggression comes out because the pet is fearful. Certainly things we need to make sure that we're using calming techniques, and that we prevent any accidents or injuries from happening. So
how about children or a baby? what do we need to consider there? What should we prepare for? Because that's different than another cat or another dog.
Yeah. Things like to have a blanket from the baby that with the baby's scent you would let the dog or the cat get used to that scent to begin with. Always remember that a dog is a dog. It's not a human. They are not reasonable. They certainly can be reasoned with, but dogs are unpredictable, and you always have to be careful with dogs and babies or children. This goes without saying. You never ever leave a dog unsupervised certainly with a baby or a child. I see these things in the paper all the time, and it just scares me to death. A dog is a dog, and they are not 100% reliable. So you really need to be very, very cautious, and you need to be thinking of preventing any possible problem. I think the other thing that you need to be doing, and not obviously not with a baby, Alex, but with certainly with toddlers and with young children, I see so many children who are frightened of dogs, and often this is because they've already had a bad experience, and I attribute the bad experience to two causes. One, the person who owned the dog was not being responsible, but secondly, the parents of the child didn't teach the child how to behave with the dog. And the common scenario that is used now, the most common psychological research has shown that you want to teach your child to stand like a tree, and that means you stand with your arms at your side, perfectly still, and you just stand there. And no dog will bother you when you're doing that. It's when the child starts running around, screaming or yelling because they're frightened, and the big thing is waving their hands in the air. The dog thinks that you're trying to play with them. And so what they do is they'll grab a hand or grab a face, or so stand like a tree is really, and there's all kinds of stuff. Humane Society has good information, but we'll see if we can get something, some things online about that as well, because certainly I think you teach a child not to run out into the street. You need to teach a child how to behave with a dog, and most dogs will become 99% of dogs will calm them to see someone standing still. The reason dogs get so weird particularly around toddlers, is it's because their actions are unpredictable. They kind of waddle when they walk. They don't walk normally. Their hands are moving around. They make odd sounds. The dog doesn't know what to make of this, particularly if you have a dog who has not been well socialized. And so the dog gets a little bit frightened, maybe gets a little bit jumpy, jumps on the kid, and then the child is frightened for the rest of his life. So it is, though certainly there are, just as with anything, there are skills that need to be taught. And I feel so sorry for children who come into the clinic who have never been exposed to dogs. I happen to have a very rambunctious dog, and not that that's any excuse, but she wouldn't hurt a flea, and but she's big, and kids, oh gosh, they just it's too bad because I think the relationship that a child has, particularly with a dog, can be one of the formative relationships in their lives, and it's unfortunate when children have been frightened by a dog, and we always try and help them to get over that fear, and it can only be done. It can only be done gradually, of course.
Right. Well, I'm happy my nieces get along quite well with LG, and he's quite happy with them. And on that note, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with Dr. Barbara Drewry. and welcome back to Preparing for the Unexpected. Again, we've been talking with Dr. Barbara Drewry, a veterinarian here in Guelph, and we've been getting some great information, things that we need to prepare and consider with new pets. And our last segment, we're going to talk about how we prepare ourselves and our pets for disasters or in emergencies, what we need to consider and what we need to, put in place. So, Dr. Drewry, when there are disasters, we obviously see, dogs, and cats on TV walking about looking for their owners, like I said at the beginning. But what are some of the things that we need to consider when things happen? Things we should have in place.
Yeah, I think the first most important thing is to make sure that your pet can be identified. I recommend that every pet be microchipped, cat or dog, simply because that is a way of identification that cannot be lost. Most people do have collars on their dogs, so if you can have some identification on the collar, that certainly helps. But a microchip is absolutely invalid, or is absolutely valid. And the reason microchips have become so ubiquitous is that previously you had to have an individual scanner, a specific scanner for each microchip. Now the microchips are universal, and pretty well any scanner will read any microchip, so that all the vet clinics have them, all the humane societies have them. It's become a wonderful tool for identifying pets. The only problem is when people forget to update their information. So they move even to a different part of town and forget to update the microchip information. So please try to remember to do that.
So who do they update that information with?
You update it with the microchip company. Yes.
Not your vet, or
no. You have to do that. You have to do that with the company itself. We insert the microchip, but we don't have the records. So it's the microchip. We can access them for you, but we can't do the. I'm sure Lisa could help you if you had trouble updating the information, but it does need to be updated if you move. So that's something that. And the first thing we do if someone calls and says they've got a lost pet, is we scan them. Same thing with obviously with the humane societies, they scan the pet immediately, and it's just such a relief when you get that little flash, that little number, because your problems are solved. Particularly with cats, you want to be very careful. I would never put a collar on a cat. Even the breakaway ones have been known not to break away. One of my cats actually managed to get, in the days when I used to have her with a collar with a tag on it, she actually managed to get the collar caught in the ventilation grate at home. So when I came home, the tag had twisted. She was literally being choked because her collar the tag was caught in the grate. And I just never imagined. So ever since then, I don't have collars on my cats, but they're certainly microchipped. So I think that is something that everybody should do, regardless of whether we're expecting an emergency or not. I just want to talk a little bit about the kind of emergencies I'm thinking about are things like fires, or if we're going to have floods or something like that. I mean, in lots of other countries, there are other major sorts of disasters that are ongoing. In Canada, we're fairly lucky, but the kinds of things I would think about when if there is something that we are required to prepare for. For an emergency kit, I would be thinking about having a crate or a carrier that is sturdy. You want something that's not, you don't want a cloth carrier or something that's going to collapse. Because you don't know what you don't know what kind of pressure or force is going to be put on that particular carrier. You do need a strong leash or a harness, and certainly for cats as well. I would want to have a harness because there can be little Houdinis and escape quite easily. I would want to have food and water for 72 hours. The average amount of of water that a dog will drink during 72 hours is roughly 4 liters. So if you have 4 liters of water, that should be enough for 72 hours. A cat will drink about an average of about a liter in that period of time. So that's something to just some guidelines for our listeners. You need bowls and you need can openers if you've got if you're feeding some canned food, newspapers, paper towels, paper bags, litter, and a small litter box. Obviously, those are the kinds of things that you want to have organized as well. Any special medications? If your pet is diabetic, somehow you've got to keep the insulin and the syringes and that sort of thing at least enough for 3 or 4 days, as well as the veterinary clinic's contact information. So that if there is a problem, you easily have access to that. If you can have your pet file with you, so including some recent photos of your animal, your emergency numbers, contact information for friends. Think of someone who could look after your pet. If you, for instance, we had clients who were involved in a terrible fire, and they had to, obviously they were out of their house for months. They had a family member, but they needed to have someone who could take their cat. The place where they were put up would not take the cat. So you need to think of those things as certainly I think nobody likes to think about their death and about wills, but I know I do a fair bit of dog training, and we all have our contacts made. I know specifically if something happens to me, I know who's going to take Taya. So those are the kinds of, in the same way that you would make sure your children were looked after, you need to make sure that there's somewhere for your pet to go should something happen to you. Particularly, I think if you live alone, it's even more important. Obviously, you're going to want a pet first aid kit. We used to make them up, but now they're ubiquitous. They're a lot of the pet stores have them, and there are some very good ones. And you certainly want a blanket and just one toy is probably enough, but something that has their scent. Try not to wash everything beforehand. So in other words, you don't want a clean blanket necessarily. It's just come out of the washer and the dryer. You want something that has the pet smell on it, so that it reminds them of that they're safe if it has their odor on it. Does that
something
help,
comforting?
Alex, cover those things? Something
comforting.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. A toy and as I say, a blanket or a pillow, whatever. You need to try and keep things small. Obviously, we can't. You're going to have all of this. It has to be compact, in a duffel bag or whatever. But those are, I think, some of the basic things that are helpful. I would like to give thanks to our Veterinary Medical Association, the Ontario Veterinary Medical Association. I contacted them when you asked me to do this talk, and they were extremely helpful in getting information to me that they had developed on preparing for emergencies. This is something that our Ontario Association is right up on, and within 24 hours, I had a nice summary of a lot of the things that I'm talking to you about. So thank you to the Ontario Veterinary Medical Association.
Well, I know I've got some of these materials. I know I've got first aid kits and some other items, but maybe I'll put a bag together for Algie here just in case, because I wouldn't want something to happen.
I don't think I certainly didn't think about having a picture.
Yeah.
That if my dog's lost, it would really help to have some pictures. Now, most of us, I guess, probably have pictures on our phones, so that's maybe not such an issue. But to have even a couple of extra doses of medication, if your pet's on a particular medication, would be, is something to think about.
Yeah, there's definitely some interesting pieces here. What about, we talked about in putting an agenda together, emergency plan exercises. How do we involve what should we consider with our pets there?
Well, I think if I think pretty much the same things that you would be doing for your family. So you make sure that you know what exits are available and what where to go, and I think just try and include your pet in those kinds of things. Okay, if we have an exit from the second floor, how are we going to manage the dog? And it's easy if you can carry him, but LG's not so easy to carry. So I think it's a matter of you want to sort of think about think about these things. I do want to make a comment. If you have to leave your pet in the house, if you're forced to do that, we don't want them tied or caged, because that can put them in a situation where they have no hope of escape. So you want to leave them loose. You do want to leave a sign and a note saying what animals are inside, and to try and provide water and food in time dispensers if you can. If you're going to be forced to leave for a couple of days, unfortunately, what dogs and cats will do if you leave a big bowl of food is they will eat it all at once. They don't have the sense to spread it out over 3 days, so they will eat it all at once, be sick, and have nothing for the next 2 or 3 days. Now, this is obviously only in an emergency. I never recommend leaving my pets for that long, but if you have to, you have to, and you need to think about how you're going to do it.
Yes. Well, that's some great information. I know in our last show, we actually spoke with the Chief Fire Prevention Officer here in Guelph, and he mentioned some of that same information about pets, and not running back into a building to save your pet, by the way, and putting yourself in danger.
Yes.
But he touched on some of what you said, and I think these emergency kits that you mentioned, a lot of it should be common sense for people, because these are a lot of the same kind of things that we need. People,
yes.
water, food, water.
Yes. But Alex, as we all know, common sense is not that common, and sometimes it's nice to have, some guidelines, and then you make sure that you haven't forgotten things. I do have some references as well for disaster planning. We're probably not going to have much more time, but I do have some references that we can put online as well, and these are from the Ontario Veterinary Medical Association. So if you want to read a little bit more and go into things a little bit more depth, we'll make sure that those are available to you.
Well, that's great. And I'll make sure I put the Royal City Animal Hospital link in our show description so that people can check you guys out and the wonderful work you do. Again, I want to thank you for your time and your staff and all the things they do for me and for my special little guy, the little furry one who's out with his friends right now, having an enjoyable time, well, I'm sure.
Alex, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure looking after LG, and certainly it's lovely to have people who work with us in trying to keep their pets healthy.
Well, that's not just pets, but with this whole industry of preparing for the unexpected, we all have to work together. We can't just assume something is going to happen. We have to work together and get our knowledge and do our homework and put these things into action. We can't just sit around and assume when there's a flood, we know what to do and our dog or cat will be safe. Well, no, they're only going to be safe if we actually put something in place and do something.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
So that's great. I want to thank you again. And to our listeners, thank you for listening. If you have any topics you want us to touch base on the show here or want to be a guest, please feel free, send me an email at info@stone-road.com to my attention, Alex, and we'll see about putting a show together and get you some of the answers that you're looking for. Otherwise, thank you everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you next week. Stay prepared, everyone. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave a message and let me know what your thoughts are. If you'd like to be a guest on the show to talk about something related to business continuity, disaster management, COVID, personal well-being, anything that's relatable to those subjects, you can reach me through my LinkedIn profile, which is in the video description. And of course, don't forget to subscribe. In the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.